Before you decide that this message is not meant for you, pause and ask yourself a question that rarely finds space in comfortable faith. When was the last time the gospel truly unsettled you instead of reassuring you? When did it stop sounding like a summons and start sounding like a solution? If what you call good news always leaves you intact, unthreatened, unchanged, then something essential may already be missing. There is a subtle danger in a gospel that never disturbs your sleep, never interrupts your plans, never places a cross in your path. And the most dangerous distortions are never loud. They are quiet. They slip into language, into habits, into sermons that feel warm but demand nothing. This is where the real question begins to form, slowly and uncomfortably. What if the version you have learned to recognize so easily is not the real thing at all? There is a faith being preached today that asks for admiration but not obedience, belief but not surrender, comfort but not courage. It speaks endlessly of grace while remaining strangely silent about cost. It promises peace without conflict, discipleship without risk, salvation without transformation. This faith does not openly deny truth. It simply rearranges it until the sharp edges disappear. And the more familiar it becomes, the harder it is to recognize what has been lost. You may feel spiritually full and yet inwardly untouched, surrounded by words about Christ while drifting farther from his path. This is not an accident. It is the result of a gospel carefully reshaped to fit human fear, a message refined until it no longer threatens the structures we rely on to feel safe. Long before this version became common, Dietrich Bonhoeffer saw where this road leads. He understood that when faith demands nothing, it eventually becomes nothing. He warned that a gospel stripped of obedience would not merely weaken the church, but hollow it out from within, leaving behind religious language without moral spine. His concern was never theoretical. It was forged in a world where comfortable belief coexisted with immense evil, where people spoke the name of God while refusing the cost of standing for truth. Bonhoeffer recognized a pattern that repeats whenever faith chooses safety over faithfulness. And the most unsettling part is not that people rejected Christ, but that many believed they were following him while quietly walking in the opposite direction. If this makes you uneasy, it should. Because the real gospel does not ask whether you agree with it, but whether you are willing to follow it. It does not fit neatly into modern life. It disrupts it. It does not exist to affirm who you already are, but to call you into something far more demanding. Somewhere along the way, many learn to love a message that asks nothing of them and to fear the one that asks everything. The question you must now sit with is not whether this warning applies to the church at large, but whether it has already taken root within you. And once that question is truly heard, there is no turning back without consequence. What makes this journey uncomfortable is not the accusation itself, but the quiet recognition that follows it. Because somewhere beneath doctrines memorized and hymns repeated, there is a faint awareness that faith once felt heavier than it does now. It carried weight, consequence, a sense of direction that could not be negotiated. Many remember that feeling dimly, like a childhood memory that refuses to sharpen. The gospel was not something you added to life, it was something that rearranged it. And when that weight disappears, it is tempting to call the lightness freedom, even when it is closer to emptiness. Ask yourself, without rushing to defend an answer, what exactly was removed when faith became easier to carry? There is a particular relief in believing without being confronted. It allows the soul to remain intact, unbroken, untouched by demands that would require surrender. This relief often disguises itself as peace, but peace that never wrestles with truth is only silence wearing a comforting name. The human heart is skilled at confusing comfort with clarity. It prefers messages that confirm rather than challenge, that soothe rather than summon. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, faith is trained to stay within safe boundaries, never crossing into areas where obedience would cost reputation, security, or control. And the most dangerous moment is when this arrangement feels normal. This is where the inner conflict begins to tighten, because something within still remembers that belief was never meant to be passive. There is an unease that surfaces when faith no longer interferes with decisions, relationships, or ambitions. If nothing is at stake, then nothing is truly being followed. The gospel was once a call that disrupted certainty, not a philosophy that decorated it. When faith stops interrupting the self, it starts orbiting it instead. And a faith that revolves around the self will always avoid the path that leads away from it. Long before this pattern became widespread, Dietrich Bonhoeffer identified the quiet betrayal hidden within religious familiarity. He recognized that when grace is detached from obedience, it does not liberate, it anesthetizes. Words remain, rituals remain, belief remains, yet the inner posture shifts from surrender to management. Faith becomes something controlled rather than something endured. Bonhoeffer did not fear doubt as much as he feared a belief system that required nothing from those who claimed it. Because a faith that demands nothing ultimately produces nothing, not even resistance to evil. As this journey deepens, the discomfort grows sharper, but so does the clarity. The question is no longer whether faith has been softened, but why that softness feels so necessary. There is fear beneath it, fear of losing stability, fear of standing alone, fear of being forced to choose when neutrality feels safer. The gospel challenges every illusion of control by insisting that life is not preserved through avoidance, but through costly alignment with truth. When that cost is removed, faith may survive, but courage does not. And a faith without courage becomes indistinguishable from habit. The spiral tightens when the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. On one side stands a faith that reassures without transforming, that speaks endlessly of love, while never naming the demands of love. On the other stands a call that unsettles, that strips away false security and replaces it with responsibility. The human instinct is to choose the version that asks less, especially when both wear the same language. Yet language has always been easy to imitate. What cannot be imitated is the willingness to lose something for the sake of truth. That is where the dividing line quietly appears. This is not about moral perfection or heroic acts. It is about orientation, about whether faith bends toward comfort or toward faithfulness. The more faith adapts itself to protect the self, the less capable it becomes of confronting reality. Bonhoeffer understood that the church does not collapse when it is attacked from the outside, but when it is reshaped from within to avoid suffering. The danger was never persecution alone, but accommodation masquerading as wisdom. And once accommodation becomes spiritual virtue, resistance is redefined as extremism. At this point, the viewer is no longer observing an argument, but recognizing a mirror. The unease comes not from accusation, but from identification. Everyone negotiates obedience at some level. Everyone feels the pull between safety and conviction. The question is not whether this tension exists, but which side has been allowed to win without a fight. Faith that never forces this tension into the open quietly trains the soul to accept compromise as maturity. And over time, that training becomes invisible. The journey presses forward, not toward condemnation, but toward honesty. There is relief in realizing that discomfort is not a sign of error, but often a sign of alignment returning. The gospel was never meant to be absorbed without friction. It was meant to confront the self with a choice that cannot be postponed indefinitely. To follow is not to admire from a distance, but to step into a path that does not guarantee safety. The more this truth is postponed, the heavier it becomes when finally faced. What emerges now is not a demand, but an awareness. Faith has direction whether one chooses it consciously or not. It either moves inward, protecting the self, or outward, risking it. The illusion of neutrality dissolves when it becomes clear that comfort itself is a decision. Bonhoeffer's warning was not dramatic for effect, it was precise. A faith that refuses cost eventually loses its capacity to recognize truth at all. And by the time that loss is noticed, the structures built to protect comfort feel too important to abandon. This is where the tension reaches its most intimate point. Not in theology, not in history, but in the silent space where belief meets action. The gospel does not ask whether you agree with it, but whether you are willing to let it rearrange what you depend on. It does not destroy life, but it does dismantle illusions about it. The fear is not that this gospel is false, but that it is real, and real things demand response, not reflection alone. The spiral does not close yet. It holds the viewer suspended between recognition and decision, between awareness and avoidance, because once the cost becomes visible, it cannot be unseen. Faith may continue as language, but the question of obedience lingers beneath every prayer, every confession, every declaration of belief. This lingering question is not an enemy. It is an invitation disguised as unease. And that unease does not arrive to accuse, but to awaken. It presses gently at first, then steadily, reminding the soul that belief was never meant to remain theoretical. Faith lives or dies at the point where words encounter risk. The gospel does not wait for comfort before it speaks. It interrupts comfort precisely because it must. When faith no longer interrupts anything, it has already been domesticated. And a domesticated faith may feel safe, but it has lost its voice. The struggle now is internal, quiet, deeply personal. It unfolds in moments no one else sees, in decisions justified quickly and questioned slowly. The tension between self-preservation and obedience becomes harder to silence. Because once awareness awakens, avoidance requires effort. Bonhoeffer understood that the most effective way to neutralize faith is not to oppose it, but to soften it until it no longer confronts power, fear, or self-interest. And when that softening succeeds, faith remains visible but powerless. What stands before the viewer now is not a conclusion, but a threshold. The gospel does not force anyone forward, yet it never allows stillness to remain innocent. To stand still is already to lean somewhere. Faith either shapes the self or is shaped by it. There is no permanent middle ground. This realization does not arrive with noise, but with weight. A weight that presses inward, asking whether what has been believed has also been followed. The journey pauses here, not because the question has been answered, but because it has finally been heard. And once heard, it cannot be returned unopened. What comes next is not explanation, but consequence. Not information, but movement. The gospel has always waited at this exact point where comfort ends and decision begins, and everything that follows depends on what is chosen in this silence. What remains now is not an answer, but a resonance. Like a bell struck once and left to echo through open air, the truth does not rush to explain itself. It waits. It lingers in the quiet space where certainty used to live. Faith, when it is real, rarely ends with clarity. It ends with weight. A weight that settles not on the mind alone, but on the conscience. You may feel it in moments of stillness, when distractions fall away and the question returns uninvited. Not what you believe, but what your belief has shaped you into. The gospel has never been merely a message to be understood. It is a presence that follows you, asking to be carried beyond words, beyond comfort, into the fabric of how you live. There is something unsettling and strangely honest about realizing that truth does not shout, it whispers, and its power lies in how difficult it is to silence once heard. Like a path revealed only after the fog lifts, what was hidden becomes obvious in retrospect, not because it was complex, but because it was costly. The invitation has always been simple, yet demanding. To stop negotiating with conviction, to stop mistaking safety for faithfulness, to stop confusing familiarity with truth. This is the moment where reflection turns inward, and becomes personal, where the question is no longer about churches, eras, or others, but about the quiet alignment between belief and action that no one else can see for you. If something within you has stirred, do not rush to name it or tame it. Let it remain unresolved for a while. Let it work beneath the surface. And if this journey resonated, if it articulated a tension you have felt but never fully voiced, then stay close to this space. Share this reflection with someone who walks that same inner tension. Leave a comment, not to respond, but to acknowledge what was awakened. And if you feel drawn to continue exploring these deeper currents of faith, truth, and courage, consider subscribing, not as a habit, but as a commitment to remain awake. Some truths only reveal themselves to those willing to keep listening.